Hey guys, we're going to go ahead and try this for reading as well as for writing. I don't know if you've already done the writing assignment yet today, but we're going to go ahead and try it for reading as well, where I do a video lesson, where I go through the lesson with you like we would if we were in class, but we aren't in class, and so it's just a video. Um, I'll ask you a couple of questions, we'll do a little bit of reading, and what we'll do is I'll post the questions and things that I have for you guys also on Seesaw, so you can go ahead and answer them there. If you'd like to, you can also just have a piece of paper out and be writing your answer to the questions down on that. Take a picture of that and submit it, or type it up afterwards. But I will have you stop and pause the video a couple times, go and write your response to that question, then come back, watch the next part, pause, kind of like we do when we talk with our partners. We'll stop, read, and we'll stop reading and talk with our partners and then go back reading again. Kind of the same thing, but you'll pause, go answer the question, if that makes sense, okay? So, today we're going to be talking about a book called Harry Houdini, Master of Magic by Robert Kraske. We're only going to read a little bit of it. We're not going to read too much of it. And then I'll have some discussion questions I'd like you to answer. We're going to make some inferences today, and then you'll also have your regular 30 minutes of reading. I won't have you post a video or ask or answer any questions about that right now. This will be your reading assignment for today, but go ahead and still do that 30 minutes of reading. Okay? So, Harry Houdini, as some of you might know, is a very famous magician and escape artist. Now, I don't know if you guys know what an escape artist is, but it means, see how he's like in that box? It means that he would lock himself in a box like that and fill it with water. I don't know if you can see, there's little bubbles over here from his breath. He would lock himself in that box with water and then somehow magically escape, and no one ever knew how he did it. He would just suddenly disappear. And there's like locks all over it and everything. You can see the little padlocks on each one of those little crossbars. He would lock himself in there and then somehow still escape from it. He was very famous for doing this, and so we're going to read a little bit about him and learn a little bit about what that was like. So this is a biography about a man named Harry Houdini. That's a nonfiction retelling of a person's life. He became world famous in the late 1800s and the early 1900s for escaping from situations that seemed impossible to escape from, like this box that he's in right here. I'm just going to read the beginning of it today, so listen very carefully, but remember, if you need to hear something again or you got lost or confused, you can pause the video, go back and rewind it. The nice thing about the video is you don't have to ask me to repeat something, you can just go back and listen to it again. So, let's get started. There's a couple pictures. I'll show you guys the pictures briefly. Pause if you'd like to read what's on it, and then I'll read the rest of it. This is the first picture on the first page. And the first chapter is called The Great Houdini. The new safe stood on the stage of the Euston Palace Theatre in London. Its door was swung wide open. Harry Houdini, the young American magician, got ready to step inside. He was wearing only a bathing suit. London newspapers had printed these bold headlines. Houdini challenges safe maker, offers to escape from safe before a theater audience. The year was 1904. The people watching from the audience were excited. The air in the safe will only last a few minutes, one man said. He'll die if he doesn't get out fast. It's impossible. How could anyone escape from a locked safe? Houdini can. On the stage, Houdini shook hands with men who had come up from the audience. They had looked over the safe to make sure it was in good working order. A doctor had examined Houdini. He had even asked the magician to open his mouth. No tools, he told the audience, nothing on him. Then, Houdini said, shaking hands with the last man, let me enter the safe. Lock the door behind me. The heavy steel door clanged shut. A screen was placed around the safe. As the men left the stage, the orchestra played soft music. The audience settled back in their seats to wait. They watched the screen. A half hour passed. The people began to grow restless. How could he possibly get out? A woman asked. One man thought he knew the answer. Houdini isn't like the rest of us, he whispered. He has supernatural powers. Supernatural means caused by powers outside of nature, so like magical or fantastical. He can change himself into a spirit and slip between the cracks of the door, just like smoke. Oh, the woman looked at him. I don't believe that. Believe me, the man said, turning away. It's true. 40 minutes passed. Open the door, someone yelled. He's dead and can't get out. A woman screamed and fainted. 45 minutes. People were whistling and stamping. A man shook his fist. A man stood and shook his fist. Let him out. He needs help. At that moment, Houdini stepped from behind the screen. A great sigh swept through the audience. A great sigh swept through the audience. There he is. He's alive. Men rushed onto the stage to inspect the safe. The door is locked. Houdini smiled and bowed to the cheering people. How did he escape from a steel safe? No one in the audience that night guessed the answer. The fact was that Houdini had escaped in just 14 minutes. He had been sitting behind the screen for almost a half hour while the audience's excitement grew. Okay, I'm going to pause right here. What I'll have you do is, in just a moment, you're going to pause the video, go and answer this first question. I want you to briefly tell me what happened in that part of the story that we just read. We read a couple pages. What happened so far? Go ahead, pause the video, go and answer that question on Seesaw or in your writing journal or in your writing notebook, and then come back and hit play again when you're done. Okay, so if you're back now, you should have already gone and answered that first question. I'm going to go ahead and read another page or two, and then we'll stop and do something similar, okay? So, he had been sitting behind the screen for almost a half hour while the audience's excitement grew. Many years ago, before movies, radio, or TV, Harry Houdini was the greatest magician and escape artist in the world. Some people thought he was born with magical powers. But this was not true. He had become a master magician only after long years of hard work. In fact, he began working toward his goal when he was a boy. Houdini's real name was Heinrich Weiss. He was born in Budapest, Hungary in 1874, the third of 5 children of Meyer Samuel and Cecilia Weiss. Shortly after Heinrich's birth, Samuel Weiss brought his family to America. They made their home in Appleton, Wisconsin. Samuel Weiss was a rabbi, the religious leader of the Jewish people in Appleton. His congregation was small and couldn't pay Rabbi Weiss enough to support his wife and children. As they grew up, Eric and his brothers had to earn money for the family by shining shoes and selling newspapers. When Eric wasn't working or going to school, he practiced doing tricks. At the age of 9, he hung ropes from a tree branch in his backyard. Then he tied a wooden bar to the ropes. He learned to do such good stunts on the homemade trapeze that one of his friends asked him to be in his 5-cent circus. Feeling like a real circus star, Eric called himself the Prince of the Air. He loved the clapping and cheering of the boys and girls who watched him. He also practiced rope escapes. He put his hands behind his back and let his friends tie his wrists together with a rope. Lost my spot. Hold on. Tied his wrists together with a rope. After a few minutes, he held up the rope. All his friends were amazed. How had he escaped? Eric only smiled. He had already learned the first rule of being a magician. Never tell how you do a trick. Okay, go ahead and pause right there. Don't pause the video, but we're going to stop right there. And I want you to go and answer this question now on the Seesaw or in your notebook. What did you learn about Harry Houdini in this part of the story? So, from the last part to this part, what have you learned about him so far? So go ahead and pause the video, go ahead and answer that question, and then come back when you're done. Okay, if you're back now, you should have answered the second question as well. What did you learn about Harry Houdini in this part of the story? I'm going to read just a little bit more, and then I'll have a little discussion post for you guys at the end. Okay. Excuse me. You guys know reading out loud makes me yawn. Even when I don't have an audience, it still makes me yawn. He had already learned the first rule of being a magician. Never tell how you do a trick. Mother Weiss was amazed at another trick her son had learned. Pieces of her apple cake began to disappear. So she hid the cake in a cupboard and locked the door. The cake still vanished. One day, after several cakes had disappeared, she found out where they went. Her son had a new interest: picking locks. The small lock on her cupboard was easy to open with a bent piece of wire. "That doesn't surprise me," the town locksmith said. He had heard about Irik's trick. "That boy has been coming to my shop for weeks. He can pick any lock in the place." In 1887, when Irik was 13, Rabbi Weiss moved his family to New York. There were more Jewish people there, and Rabbi Weiss hoped to start a small religious school. But he became ill and could do nothing to support his wife and 5 children. To help his sick father, Irik took whatever jobs he could find. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Whatever jobs he could find. During one Christmas season, he worked as a package delivery boy for a large store. One day, he lettered a card and pinned it to his hat. "Christmas is coming. Turkeys are fat. Please drop a quarter in the messenger boy's hat." Sounds a little bit like a poem, maybe? If you've already done the writing assignment today, you'll know what I mean. That evening, he stood in front of his mother. "Shake me," he said. "I'm magic." As she shook her son, Mrs. Weiss's eyes opened wide. Quarters dropped out of her son's sleeves and fell into her lap. "Irik," she exclaimed in German, the language that she always spoke, "there's enough money to pay the rent this week." She hugged her hard-working son. Okay, we're going to pause again right there. You're going to answer the same basic question: what have you learned about Harry Houdini in this part of the story? Go ahead and answer that. That's the third question for this reading today. Pause the video, go answer that question, and then come right back. Okay, if you're playing the video again, that means you've answered the third question, and you're ready for the next part. So, she hugged her hardworking son. After Christmas, Irik looked for another job. As he walked along Broadway, he came upon a line of boys in front of a small factory. H. Richter's Sons. A sign in the window read, "Assistant necktie cutter wanted." Irik was only 14 years old, but he boldly walked to the head of the line. He took the sign off the door. "The job is taken," he told the boys. "Thank you for waiting." His bluff worked. A bluff is a lie. He got the job and stayed at H. Richter's Sons for the next 2.5 years. During these years, Irik practiced magic in his spare time. He did card tricks and trick rope ties. He read books on magic and gave magic shows to neighborhood clubs. He called himself Cardo, or Eric the Great. These clubs paid Irik a few dollars for each show. Mother Weiss was always waiting for the extra money, to buy medicine for Papa, who was sick in bed, to put food on the table, and to pay the rent. The money helped, but magic was only a hobby. Irik never thought about making a living doing tricks. Chapter 2. Behold, a miracle! One day, when Irik was 16, he went into a bookstore. Looking along the shelves, he came across an old book on the life of Robert Houdin. It was a moment that changed his life. Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin was the greatest magician in France. He performed before the French Emperor and before England's Queen Victoria. He pulled cannonballs from an empty hat. He made trees grow fruit on the stage. He even floated ladies in midair. Irik spent the night reading Robert Houdin's life story. The next morning, his mother found him in bed still reading. "Irik," she scolded, "so much reading, it will hurt your eyes." "Mother," Irik said, "please, never mind my eyes. I was reading the most important book of my life." "So?" Mother Weiss said. "What makes this book so important at 6 o'clock in the morning?" Irik held up the book. "This man, Robert Houdin, has made me see that I can make magic my life's work. If he did, so can I." Mother Weiss's eyebrow lifted. "A fine thought, Irik. But can you make money doing magic? Remember poor Papa, he was unable to work for us. He is unable to work for us. There's the rent to pay, and we must eat." Irik stared at the book. "I don't know how much money I can make, but I want to become a magician, just like Robert Houdin." Within a few days, Irik left his job at H. Richter's Sons. He also made another important change. To honor his hero, he decided to change his name to Houdini. His friends called him Irie, which sounded like Harry. He became Harry Houdini. He was 17 years old. Okay. That is our whole reading today. what I'd like you to do now is, again, in just a second, you'll pause the video, go answer the fourth question, and same question as last time. What did you learn about Harry Houdini in this part? That's the fourth question that you'll answer, and then come back, and I have a couple other questions that I'll read for you, and then I'll have you answer in the same post. So pause, go answer that, and then come right back. Okay. If you're back, then that means you've answered the first 4 discussion questions from our story today, Harry Houdini, Master of Magic. And then I have just a couple more questions for you that I'd like you guys to all answer in the same post. So I'm just going to read those out for you now, and then I'll give you the expectations, what I want you to write, and then you can go and get started. Okay, so at the beginning of the passage that we read today, Harry was at the Euston Palace Theatre. Remember, he was doing his magic trick there. Why was the audience at the theater so excited? What was going on that had them all riled up and so excited? So that'll be one question that you answer. The next question says, what word would you use to describe Harry when he was a boy? Why would you use that word? Why do you think Harry was well suited to become a magician? So it's kind of 3 questions in one. I'll separate them on the post so that you can, the first 2 kind of go together. So I'll put the first 2 together and then the third one separately. So what word would you use to describe him as a boy and why? And then also, why was he so well suited to become a magician? And the last question I have for you is just, what did you think of the story so far? What questions do you have about Harry Houdini? What makes you curious about it? What questions do you have? Things like that. Because I'm excited to read more of the story with you. I think Harry Houdini is very cool. I think magic is pretty cool, and escape artistry is really awesome in itself as well. Those are the discussion questions for today. So you'll go and answer those questions and post that as your response to this assignment. But then you do still have your 30 minutes of reading today that, again, especially in times like these where we're not getting to see each other and do IDR time kind of throughout the day as you finish things, it's really important that you guys are finding a time to get those 30 minutes in. Break it up and do 3 different 10-minute chunks, or just sit down and do all 30 minutes all at once. It's up to you guys. That's kind of the cool thing with this, is that we can be flexible with it, but please, please, please make sure that you are doing your 30 minutes. And at the very bottom of this post, please include the title of the book that you're reading. I'd like to know what you guys are reading at home. So if you have any questions, you're confused about anything, go ahead, re-watch the video, and then if you're still confused about it, send me an email, and I'll see what I can do to help you guys, okay? I look forward to seeing your responses. I miss you guys.